Hi and welcome back to Bike Speeds. This week we've got this Crashed Colnago to repair. This was in a group race and he clipped another rider at the front end. It brought him down, so we need to make sure this bike is safe and ready to race another race. We've got a bent hood here that we're going to need to straighten and just make sure the gears are working. Potentially we could have damage inside the steerer tube. These are carbon forks, so we need to make sure they're safe, so we'll take the forks off and check those through. The tyre is deflated on the front. This is a tubeless tyre, so we need to clean up the seal on that, put new sealant in, and also check the tensions of the front wheel to make sure that is absolutely spot on and perfect and no damage there. So we'll go right through this front end on this bike, so let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is focus my attention on the front wheel. So take that out first, and then I'm going to remove the tyre, clean up all the sealant, make sure that the seat of the tyre is nice and clean before we try to re-inflate this one. So out comes that tyre, and you can see there that the sealant has really dried off in this tyre. Now that could be from the deflation. It may have been a week or two before the bike eventually got back to me, but you can see here the sealant has completely dried out in this tyre. So I'm going to peel that off. Thankfully it was pretty straightforward really, just to peel this away. But look here, there's a big clump of sealant here where it's completely dried out, where that has been at the 6 o'clock position when the bike's been stored at some point. So you can see how your sealant can really clog up in your tyre. So we want to make sure that we clean all the seat and the edge and that sealant off before we even do anything to re-inflate this tyre. So I'm using here a little bit of glue and sealant remover around the rim itself, just to make sure that the seat of the rim, that little groove that tyre sits in, is nice and clear of the sealant. And then I'm also going to replace the valve core, but I also need to make sure that the valve itself is clear of sealant, the fact the rest are dried out like that. So all I'm going to do is just poke an Allen key through here to clear off any debris that might be inside there, to make sure we can get a good flow of air into this tyre when we try to re-inflate it. Now at this stage I'm putting the original tyre back on. I didn't really realise what work was going to be involved with this, but you'll see that as we progress here. So on goes the tyre. Normally I can put my compressed air onto this, and with a compressed air I can normally inflate these, but you can see here it wasn't going up at all. This is typical of a tyre that may have stretched and worn into a wheel. Sometimes they don't go back on straight forward, but there was actually a reason for this, which I'll show you. But now we're going to use an air cannon. This is inflated and released rapidly, and it's usually enough to get a tyre onto a rim, and in this case it did get the tyre on the rim, but I could hear air escaping rapidly. So I did an inspection of the tyre, and you can see here we've got a little tear here, a little tear here, another one just along it here, slightly bigger, and you can see they're glancing slices. There's 4 of them here, and I would say that as this wheel has gone into another rider's wheel, the spokes of the other rider have sliced this tyre enough to release air. So I couldn't see that initially, but that was the problem we were having inflating this tyre. So unfortunately this tyre is at the end of its life despite having very little wear in it. So we're going to discard that one and put on a brand new tyre. Always a great shame really, and often with a job like this you don't know what problems it's going to throw you along the way. You can do things in your normal rhythm and routine and find a problem like this that will steer the course of the job and the work required. So again, air compressor, that goes on nicely. You see it lift onto the seat there, and what I do is I inflate it like this, then I release the air, and it's usually enough to have one bead of the tyre that secures itself to the wheel, which makes inflating it after we've added the sealant, which we're now doing, making inflating it just that little bit easier. So in goes the sealant there, a brand new valve core. I don't want to mess around with the old one here. I want to be able to get the air into it, and actually in this case, because we'd seated it once, we can inflate that with a normal pump, and up she goes, and everything there is good. So now we've got the tyre sorted out. The main reason for the puncture was the spokes have been caught in that tyre, and now I'm going to true the wheel up and retension it. So you can see here before and after we're getting those tensions within 5% of each other. There was quite a lot wrong with this wheel. If you notice on the 3 o'clock position there how they both stick out, that's because both sides have been over tightened to compensate for each other, and we've got a much more even tension around the whole wheel. So this wheel had a flex during the accident. I could see that from the way it was tensioning, so it did need that retensioning and retruing. So I'm quite happy now that everything with the wheel and tyre is safe and ready to go. Next up, I need to inspect these forks. When a bike has a knock like this, it can twist the stem on the steerer tube of the forks, and we don't want that to damage the forks in any way. So we do need to just check that steerer tube and make sure that there is no visual carbon damage to it that could be dangerous if we was to leave it on the bike. So first of all, we're going to remove the forks out of the frame so that we can inspect them on the bench. So they come out now, and then we can get them on the bench, clean up all the old grease off of the steerer tube. So we just check everything along here, check it visually, make sure there's no damage. And you can see there the carbon is all intact, no damage at all. A couple of little rings on the top there, but nothing that would concern me in any way. And next up, we can put the bearings back on. So I've cleaned the bearings, I've cleaned the races. We want everything to be nice. We want to make sure that everything goes back together smoothly with no grit that would actually reduce the life of the bearing because we took the forks out. So we'll clean the top race as well. So that's what we're doing now. And then also we'll clean out the top cup there before putting the bearings back in. So I'm just using a little bit of degreaser here, wipe that seat around, make sure everything there is nice, fresh and clean, no damage, and then a little bit of grease just to seat the bearing, just to stop it making any noises and to help it seat into its position. Nice bit of premium grease there, and in goes the original bearing. So we're using the original bearings. There was no wear in these really, they were pretty much like new, so no issues there with this. Now we can put back on the handlebars. The spacers all go on first, and I make sure to line up all the logos on those. On go the bars, we can make sure that they are now square to the front wheel as we put it together, and then we can tighten everything up. Quite happy here. So next up, I will put the front brake back on. You see there, I'm using a little bit of our anti-seize grease on this bolt. These bolts are very common for going rusty, very common for picking up the debris from the road and seizing into that hole. So grease on that will always help when you take it apart next time. So that was what I was doing there. On goes that lovely retention wheel with the brand new tyre, and then I'd need to square up the left hand hood, which had a big old twist in it. But these are aluminium bars, so I didn't feel there was any need to remove the bar tape to inspect the handlebars on this one. I felt everything there was okay, so we can torque that up and everything there will be good. If they were a carbon bar, I would most definitely have inspected the handlebars, but in this case I felt that was enough. Now I'm retorquing up the crown. A crash like this is a great example of why I torque these, so that the bars can't move and cause an even bigger crash by disappearing underneath you. And also obviously we've had the stem off, so I need to check these steerer tube bolts as well, so we just torque those up. I will also torque up all the bits on the front end, so this brake caliper, the brake pads, obviously we don't know if they've twisted or come loose during the crash, but we need to make sure everything there is safe. And finally the front caliper. Give the front wheel a little spin, make sure the brake is nice and central to the rim itself and everything is braking there correctly. And then also just need to check this front derailleur is shifting, because obviously that shifter had a knock, so we want to make sure the gears are changing, and that's perfect. So that's this one all safe and sound now, ready for its next race. Thankfully this area at the top here, although there were a few twists and turns, wasn't damaged in any way, so that's all safe. Most of the accident damage was taken in the front wheel with the tyre and the wheel, but we've solved all those problems, so everything is good. A few of the items that we've used in this video are available on our website, so please do check out the link in the description below. Do like and subscribe to the channel as well, always helps us out, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.